this story now, investigations are continuing into 5 Crystal Park High School pupils arrested for assaulting a fellow classmate. The alleged bullying incident was caught on camera. Gauteng Education MEC Lesufi visited the school yesterday and called for an end to what he termed madness. Psychologist Jeremy Bayer joins us in studio now to discuss this latest incident. Mr. Bayer, thank you very much for giving us your time. Before we talk about the group of girls who were beating this poor girl on the ground, talk to us about what that little girl is going through, the emotions.
Yeah.
And certainly, I don't see her ever going back to that school.
Yeah, there's a high likelihood of school refusal and absenteeism, or probably wanting to leave the school. So that would be one example of many symptoms. Other symptoms, nightmares, physical complaints, academic deterioration, whether she stays at the school or not, because even if she's at another school, the trauma may remain. So that may stay. A loss of energy and concentration in class, because when she's sitting in the class, she might still be recounting the incident over and over again. Sort of general worrying and stress all the time, even symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, and even suicidal thoughts. It can get as bad as that, and of course social withdrawal. And the reason for the social withdrawal is because, of course, her trust in people generally might be impacted. Because when we are traumatized, 2 assumptions get shattered: that the world is a safe place and that people can be trusted. And those are the things that may be in her mind shattered, that she can no longer trust her peers and many others, whether she stays at the school or goes somewhere else. So those are typical symptoms she may experience.
Let's talk about the perpetrators, the group of girls who were beating her up.
Yeah.
They are young people.
Yeah.
What gets into them? What motivates them to do this kind of thing? Because surely, I'm sure you're going to tell me that mob mentality kicks in. But I think I'm more interested in the after effects. After they've done the deed, do they realize just how wrong they were?
I think there are multiple factors here afterwards. So firstly, number one, is there a culture in the school of bullying, and is there a survival of the fittest mentality? In other words, if the culture in the school is I've got to hurt to survive here, if people at the school are highly fearful, then these kids might think this is how I've got to defend myself. So that's how they may see it. That's the first thing. Secondly, if these kids come from a society or home where they're modeling abusive behavior, so the father is abusing the mother, then it may be embedded in their mind that this is how you solve conflict. So if they can do it, if adults can do it, well, why can't I? It might be like that. Thirdly, this child might see this kid as happy, doing well. And what happens with these types of children is they might come from homes where they feel powerless or forgotten, where they're ignored, abused, and so they start envying this child. But the key thing to remember, Chloe, the key thing to remember is that a child who bullies is still a child, and a child who hurts and abuses is a distressed child. So even though this child afterwards may not feel remorse, that doesn't mean they're happy. Who's attending to the child? Where's the parents in helping, talking to these children? But often what happens is this child gets stigmatized, or they're seen as deviant, they get sidelined, and then the risky behavior escalates into even worse things. So you've got to help the perpetrator as well.
The MEC of Education in Gauteng, understandably, he's livid. He says this is actually madness, what you've done here. You've embarrassed yourselves. You've embarrassed yourselves in front of the country.
Yeah.
The law enforcement has decided to charge these pupils with assault.
Yes.
Apparently this is something that is not often done. Is this the way to go in terms of trying to deter those who may want to do this in the future? Is this a good deterrent?
No, it's not the right way. Very simply because, as is the case with many things in this country, it's reactive. The same as gender-based violence. We need a trauma or a horrific incident to react. So he's right that it's madness, but that doesn't solve the problem. So what do I believe should happen? Firstly, we need a standardized anti-bullying policy throughout the country put into schools. I believe that. Secondly,
Does it exist?
I don't think it doesn't exist. Anti-bullying policy, I mean, for government to put that in. I believe that should. Then anti-bullying programs need to be put in, because right now there's an as and when mentality. When an incident happens, then Lesufi goes to the school and deals with it. It's not nearly enough. more class meetings about bullying in the schools. Secondly, and what I believe, mental health to be taught as a subject in schools. Because it's not just about the bullying, but it's about the behavior that's triggering it. Anger, frustration, an inability to solve conflict. There's a bigger picture. But we don't, in this country, mental health is not taught. That should happen. And bullying and the psychological impact of bullying should be part of the school curriculum, without a doubt. Then cooperative learning activities in schools. Often the victim is sidelined or is lonely. So the bullies target the victim. So more cooperative learning activities in schools, which include everyone. Then, of course, more psychologists and social workers in schools. Your school, like St. Mary's, for example, which is a private school, will have 2 or 3 psychologists, whereas a government school won't have any. So that speaks to inequality in the healthcare system. So there's a much bigger picture here. Bullying is not an isolated incident. It doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It comes from a place of anger and frustration. But to just be reactive all the time, and that's the same as gender-based violence, will take us nowhere. What plans are being put into place? And I believe mental health should be taught as a subject, and there should be more funds put into child mental health services, because it's not seen as a priority at the moment.
We do have a problem in the country.
Yeah.
Of violence, whether gender-based violence. I mean, these videos are doing the rounds. It was Babes Wotumo in Mampinja just last week. It's just a recurring problem. What can the government do about it? Can the president instill something new in the minds of ordinary South Africans? Can the president inspire a new way of doing things? Or is this actually something that is way beyond his scope?
It's not about being way beyond. It's about a holistic approach. Okay, nothing a policeman or woman can do if there's domestic violence, if your husband comes home drunk and beats up on his wife. So there's multiple factors here. Multiple factors. Can the president do something? Well, yes. More investment into healthcare services and child mental health care services, and more investment into mental health, without a doubt. That's number 1. 2, parents becoming more educated about bullying, as well as the teachers. So learning about the psychological impact of bullying, gender-based violence, that needs to happen in the schools as well. So that too. In terms of substance abuse, because the amount of times I'll hear a client say to me, my husband came home drunk and then he beat on me. I've heard that 1,000,000 times. So more investment into rehab clinics, teaching people about substance abuse, and for example, addressing the easy access of drugs and alcohol, because it's as easy as taking candy from kids at the moment. So can you see how the intervention is holistic? Yes, we can put laws and policies in place, but it doesn't matter if your husband has depression or anxiety and takes his frustrations out on his wife, that type of thing. So it is a holistic approach. More investment into mental health, more government intervention, more clinics, and without a doubt, addressing inequality in healthcare. Without a doubt. Because right now, your child in Tembisa, who lives in a shack, cannot afford weekly sessions of therapy. It doesn't work. Only the medical aid system right now is for the wealthy, and that has to change. So it's a holistic approach, not just Cyril Ramaphosa.